The water shimmers under the summer sun, rippling with every soft gust of wind. It's a perfect day. Blue sky, warm air, the faint scent of chlorine mixing with fresh-cut grass. Andre Lewis leans back in his lounge chair, stretching out on the poolside deck of his own damn home. He worked too hard for this. 38 years old, a business owner, a homeowner, a black man in a gated community where the welcome smiles always felt just a little forced. He knew how to play the game. Stay polite. Keep your head down. Don't give them a reason to clutch their purses or call the HOA. But here, in his backyard, he could breathe. Until now, a splash, a shadow in the water. Andre looks up, and there he is, Greg Mason, the neighbor from hell, floating in Andre's pool like he owns it. Greg's got that same smug grin, wet blonde hair slicked back, like some TV dad from a 90s sitcom. He raises a beer can and a lazy toast. What's up, Dre? Pool's nice today. Andre's jaw tightens. He hates when Greg calls him that. Like they're close. Like they've ever been close. Greg and his family moved a year ago. At first, it was just awkward small talk in the driveway, passing nods, fake neighborly pleasantries. But Greg had a habit of pushing boundaries, little things that chipped away at Andre's patience, borrowing tools without asking, parking just a little too close to Andre's driveway, always acting like this neighborhood, this space, was his control. And now the man's using his pool. Again, Andre grips the arm of his chair. Didn't realize I was running a public pool, Greg. Greg just laughs. That easy, careless laugh, like Andre is overreacting, like this is all just a joke. Oh, come on, man. You weren't even swimming. That's not the point. Greg takes another sip of his beer and floats on his back. Relax, bro. It's just water. Andre watches him, eyes narrowing. This isn't just about the pool. This is about how Greg never asks, never thinks he needs to. It's about that underlying entitlement, that unspoken assumption that Andre should be fine with this. Because what's his is Greg's to take. Andre exhales slowly, pushing the anger down. He won't give Greg the satisfaction. I need you to get out, he says, voice even. Greg opens one eye, a smirk twitching at his lips. Yeah, sure. But he doesn't move. Andre doesn't either. The sun beats down. The water ripples. And just like that, Andre knows this isn't over. The next morning, Andre steps out onto his back patio with a cup of coffee, stretching as the early sunlight warms his skin. It should be a quiet morning, peaceful, but something feels off. His pool cover is pulled back. Water drips from the edges, a telltale sign that someone's been in it. Again, Andre's jaw clenches. Greg, he walks closer, scanning the deck. A half-crushed beer can sit near the lounge chairs. His stomach tightens. This wasn't here last night. Andre swears under his breath and picks up the can, turning it over in his fingers. Greg had said it was just water, but it was more than that. It was control. It was ownership. And Andre is getting real tired of this game. He checks the gate that separates his yard from Greg's. It's unlatched. He locks it, pressing down to make sure it clicks into place. Enough is enough. Andre turns to head back inside when a voice calls out, "Morning, Dre." That voice. That damn voice. Greg leans over the fence. Fresh beer already in hand, like it's 5 in the evening instead of 8 in the morning. His grin is too easy, too familiar. The kind of smile that says he knows exactly what he's doing. Hot one today. Greg says, "Hope you don't mind me cooling off last night. Figured you wouldn't mind." Andre exhales slowly. "Actually, I do." Greg tilts his head like a confused puppy. "Oh, come on. Don't be like that." Andre steps closer, his voice level but firm. "This is my property, Greg. You don't get to use it without asking." Greg chuckles, shaking his head. "Man, you act like I stole your car. It's just a pool. Just a pool. Just an unlocked gate. Just a neighbor who refuses to acknowledge boundaries." Andre studies him, that creeping unease curling in his gut. This isn't just ignorance. It's something else. Greg takes a sip of beer, then gestures lazily at Andre's house. You know, place like this, surprised you can even afford it. The words land like a slap. There it is. Not even subtle. Not even veiled. Just right there in the open, thrown out like an afterthought. Andre keeps his face blank, his hands steady. He won't give Greg the reaction he's fishing for. Greg grins wider. Must be nice, huh? Sitting on a house like this, living the dream. Guess we're both lucky guys. Andre nods slowly, a quiet storm brewing behind his eyes. Yeah, lucky. Greg chuckles again and steps back. Well, enjoy your morning, Dre. He takes another sip, then winks. See you around. The gate creaks as Greg strolls away, leaving behind a bitter taste of something deeper than trespassing. And Andre knows this isn't just a nuisance anymore. This is a problem. The next day, Andre installs cameras. If Greg wants to play games, he'll play too, but on his own terms. A small part of him wonders if he's overreacting. It's just a pool, right? Just an annoying neighbor with no respect for boundaries. But the other part, the part that has spent his whole life navigating these little microaggressions, these unspoken rules that people like Greg always think they get to bend, knows better. This isn't just about the pool. This is about control. And Greg is about to learn that Andre doesn't bow. The first confrontation. That evening, Andre watches a security feed from his phone. 2:14 a.m. movement. His pulse spikes. The camera catches the unmistakable figure of Greg Mason, slipping through the gate like he owns the place. He's barefoot, beer in hand, strolling across Andre's deck with the same cocky ease he's had since the day he moved in. Andre doesn't hesitate. He throws on a hoodie, grabs his phone, and heads outside. Greg is waist-deep in the pool when Andre turns on the floodlights. Get out! Greg startles, then squints up at him, that lazy smirk forming almost instantly. Jesus, Dre, you trying to blind me? Andre steps forward, his presence towering. I told you to stop coming onto my property. Greg sighs, stretching his arms along the pool's edge. He's not even trying to apologize. Relax, man. I was just taking a quick dip. No harm, no foul. Andre grips his phone tighter. Every fiber of his being screams to keep his cool. That's how it always goes, right? He reacts too hard. He's a problem. He speaks too firmly. He's a threat. But this isn't about playing respectability politics. This is about his home, his space. I have you on camera. Andre holds up his phone. So unless you wanted to send this to the HOA, you'll get out. Now. For a split second, something flashes across Greg's face. Annoyance. Then something darker. Something Andre recognizes all too well. That simmering resentment. That deep-seated belief that men like him aren't supposed to challenge men like Greg. Greg pushes himself up out of the water, dripping onto the deck, eyes locking onto Andre's. Man, you're really taking this too far. What? You don't like me being here. That it? You're trespassing, Andre says, voice sharp. That's not up for debate. Greg steps closer, shaking his head like Andre is some unreasonable child. I live next door. We're neighbors. This whole thing. He gestures around like the backyard is a shared park. It's not that serious. Andre tightens his jaw. It is to me. Greg scoffs. Yeah, I bet. His tone is laced with something ugly. Some people get a little property and suddenly think they're better than everyone else. Andre stiffens. He knows exactly what Greg is implying. Pushing back. The next morning, Andre sends the footage to the HOA. He keeps the email professional. No emotion, no accusations, just the facts. A neighbor has been trespassing on his property repeatedly. He has video proof. He expects action. A response comes back within the hour. We appreciate your concerns, Mr. Lewis. However, given that Mr. Mason is also a resident in the community, We encourage you to resolve any neighborly disputes amicably, unless there is significant property damage or a formal police report. The HOA does not intervene in minor residential disagreements. Andre exhales through his nose. Minor residential disagreements. He knew this would happen. The same system that polices him over noise complaints and suspicious behavior suddenly has no interest in enforcing property rules when the violator looks like Greg. Fine. If they won't handle it, he will. He sends the footage to a lawyer friend. Then he calls the local precinct. It's time to make this official. Greg's retaliation. That night, Andre is woken by loud voices outside. He sits up, heart hammering. Something feels wrong. He steps onto his deck and freezes. Greg is standing on the side of the fence, arms crossed, talking to two police officers. One of them, a tall white officer with a clipped tone, gestures toward Andre's house. We got a call about a disturbance. Andre blinks. A what? Greg shrugs. His expression is cool, calculated. Just thought it was weird you've been watching me on cameras. Feels a little invasive, don't you think? Andre stares at him. He called the cops on me? One of the officers shifts his weight. Mr. Mason says you've been harassing him. Andre almost laughs. I have him on camera breaking into my yard. Greg puts his hands up, feigning innocence. Man, I was just hanging out by the fence. Didn't even step inside this time. But, some people get paranoid. The unspoken words hang heavy in the air. Some people. Andre watches the officers carefully. He knows how this goes. He could show them the footage, but would they even care? Greg smiles, tilting his head like he's already won, like he's reminding Andre exactly where the power lies. Andre breathes in, slow and controlled. Fine. If Greg wants to play dirty, he'll play too, because Andre isn't going to lose. He steps back toward his house. If the police won't stop Greg, if the HOA won't stop Greg, he'll find another way. And when he does, Greg won't see it coming. The sun is setting, casting a burnt orange glow over the neighborhood. Andre stands on his back patio, waiting. He's tired, not just physically, but in the way that settles deep in the bones. The exhaustion of always having to prove yourself, to justify your place in a space you rightfully own. But tonight that ends, because tonight, Greg is about to learn that Andre doesn't lose. Greg's final move. The gate swings open without hesitation. Greg, cocky as ever, striding onto Andre's deck like he owns it. This time, he's not alone. Two other neighbors, Tom and Rick, follow behind him, beers in hand. Andre watches them, his face unreadable. Greg grins wide, spreading his arms. Dre, hope you don't mind, but I figured if you were going to make such a big deal about the pool, we might as well have a little get-together. He walks right up to the pool's edge, kicking off his flip-flops. Tom and Rick chuckle, amused, waiting to see if Andre will snap. Andre doesn't move, doesn't flinch. Greg leans in, voice dropping just enough to keep it between them. You keep making a fuss, but let's be real, you can't do a damn thing about it. The HOA isn't on your side. Cops sure as hell aren't. You gonna call them again? Say I'm being too threatening? See how that plays out for you. There it is. The unspoken truth laid bare. Greg thinks he's won. He thinks Andre is just another black man who will be dismissed, ignored, made out to be the problem while Greg plays the victim. And for a moment there's silence. Then Andre smiles. Not the polite, neighborly one he usually wears. Not the tense, forced one he's used for a year to keep the peace. No, this is something colder, sharper, because Greg made a mistake. He underestimated the man standing in front of him. Andre's trump card. Andre pulls out his phone. With a single tap, the backyard speakers crackle to life. And then Greg's voice fills the air. Man, you're really taking this too far. Some people get a little property and suddenly think they're better than everyone else. The color drains from Greg's face. Tom and Rick shift uncomfortably. You keep making a fuss, but let's be real, you can't do a damn thing about it. The words slam into the humid evening air. Undeniable, undeniable. Crystal clear proof. Andre watches Greg smirk falter, his arrogance cracking. You think I installed cameras without audio? Andre says, voice even. You think I didn't expect you to do exactly this? Greg's eyes flick to the side, searching for an out. Andre steps forward. See, Greg, I sent all this to my lawyer. And guess what? Trespassing? Harassment? That's all documented now. Greg forces a laugh. Man, this is ridiculous. You're seriously gonna... I also sent to the HOA. Andre interrupts smoothly. They weren't too interested at first, but after a few local news outlets got the footage, they suddenly had a change of heart. Greg blinks. What? Andre smirks. Oh, yeah. Apparently, they don't like the idea of a viral story about a white guy breaking into his black neighbor's yard while the HOA shrugs. Tom and Rick exchange glances. They didn't sign up for this kind of trouble. Greg steps closer, lowering his voice, desperation creeping in. Come on, man. You don't want to do this. Let's just drop it, huh? No need to. Oh, we're past that. Andre cuts in, his voice like steel. You wanted to make this a game. Well, guess what? You lost. Greg's fall. The silence is suffocating. Then Greg's phone buzzes. He hesitates, then looks down at the screen. His face twists. Andre already knows what the message says. The HOA's official notice. A fine for repeated trespassing. A formal complaint filed. A warning of potential legal action. Greg's jaw clenches. This is bullshit. Is it? Andre tilts his head. Because I have more footage. You think I won't send it to your employer? The cops? I mean, let's be honest. Who do you think they'll believe now? Greg's mouth opens, then closes. He's out of moves. Tom clears his throat. Yeah, maybe we should go. Greg glares at him, but he knows he's already lost control. And Andre just watches, because he doesn't have to raise his voice. He doesn't have to beg for justice. He just has to let Greg drown in the consequences of his own arrogance. Greg finally turns away, muttering curses under his breath. He storms toward the gate, slamming it behind him. And just like that, he's out. Andre stands tall. For the first time in weeks, the air in Andre's backyard feels lighter. The weight of Greg's entitlement, his presence, his constant invasions, it's gone. The pool ripples gently, untouched. His home is his again. And as Andre leans against the deck railing, watching the last light fade from the sky, he knows one thing for sure. Greg Mason? He won't be coming back. Greg is unraveling. Andre watches it happen in real time. It starts the morning after their confrontation. Greg storms into the HOA office, demanding to meet with the board. He's angry, flustered, his usual smug confidence replaced by frantic desperation. But the board isn't budging. Too much heat, too much attention. The leaked security footage, Andre's footage, has spread like wildfire across the community Facebook page. The caption? Local HOA protects trespassing neighbor while ignoring black homeowners' rights. Sound familiar? It's been shared hundreds of times. Greg tries to fight back. Greg's first move is predictable. Deny. Deflect. Play the victim. It's just a misunderstanding, he tells HOA board, his voice a perfect mix of forced patience and indignation. Andre's been twisting this whole thing. I wasn't trespassing. I was just using the pool like a lot of neighbors do. We're supposed to be a community, right? One of the board members, a stiff-looking woman in a beige blazer, gives him a flat look. Mr. Mason, there is video evidence of you entering Mr. Lewis's backyard at night without permission. That's not community use. That's trespassing. Greg clenches his jaw. Come on, Diane. You know me. I'm not some criminal. Another board member, an older black man named Mr. Reynolds, clears his throat. He's been on the board for years, watching how these things go. His voice is calm but firm. Mr. Mason, the footage also captured your comments. He folds his hands on the table. Are you saying we should ignore that as well? Greg stiffens. What? I was just messing around. Everyone jokes like that. Mr. Reynolds exhales, shaking his head. No, Greg, not everyone does. The next blow, Greg leaves the meeting fuming. He calls Tom and Rick, his two buddies from a night before. Neither of them answer, because they've already seen the footage. They've seen the Facebook comments, the HOA discussions, the murmurs of an official police report. Suddenly, being associated with Greg Mason isn't so appealing. And then the final, unexpected twist lands. The news hits his job. Greg's company, a high-profile real estate firm, prides itself on diversity and inclusion, which is why when a concerned resident forwarded the viral video to HR, things escalate fast. By the time Greg shows up to work Monday morning, his boss is waiting. We need to talk, she says, her expression unreadable. Greg tries to act surprised. What's going on? His boss just sighs. Then she presses play on her phone. Greg's own voice crackles through the speaker. Some people get a little property and suddenly think they're better than everyone else. You keep making a fuss, but let's be real, you can't do a damn thing about it. Greg's stomach drops. We've received multiple complaints. His boss says, this isn't the kind of reputation we can afford. Greg grips the arms of the chair. This is ridiculous. It's taken out of context. I was just joking around. His boss raises an eyebrow. Joking? He scrambles. Come on, Lisa. You know me. We do know you, she interrupts, her voice clipped. That's the problem. Greg stares. And just like that, he's done. They don't even let him pack up his desk. Public exposure. By the end of the week, Greg Mason is the most talked about name in the neighborhood. Parents whisper about him at school drop-offs. Neighbors avoid eye contact when he walks past. The man who once walked around like he owned everything now has nowhere to turn. Andre? He just watches from a distance. He doesn't need revenge. He doesn't need to gloat. Greg did this to himself. The final blow. One evening. As Andre sits on his deck, the sound of shuffling footsteps catches his attention. He looks up. Greg stands at the gate. But he's different now. Gone is the cocky smirk, the swagger, the self-assurance. Now, Greg just looks small. For a long moment, neither of them speaks. Then, Greg swallows hard. He rubs the back of his neck. I just wanted to say... Andre doesn't let him finish. Don't. Greg flinches. You weren't sorry when you thought you had the upper hand. Andre says. His voice isn't angry. Just tired. Done. Greg shifts uncomfortably. Look, man, Andre stands up. Not threatening. Not aggressive. But firm. You should go, Greg. Greg hesitates. Then, for the first time, he listens without another word. He turns and walks away. And just like that, Greg Mason is out of Andre's life for good. The downfall of Greg Mason isn't loud. It's quiet. The kind of fall that doesn't come with sirens or flashing lights. Just a slow, steady collapse. By the end of the month, his house is up for sale. A rushed, desperate move. The reason? No job. No allies. No future here. The real estate firm let him go without severance. The HOA, under community pressure, issued a final trespassing complaint. One more infraction, and legal action would follow. And the neighbors? They don't speak to him. Not because Andre asked them to, because they saw the videos, the reports, the reality of what was happening right under their noses. Some pretend they didn't know. Some apologize in whispers. Awkward half-smiles in the grocery store. I had no idea it was that bad. If I had known, I would have said something. But Andre knows better. They saw. They just didn't think it was their problem. Not until the world did. Andre's peace reclaimed. One evening, Andre stands at his back patio, watching the sunset ripple across his pool. It's quiet. No intruders. No stolen moments. Just peace. It's his again. As he leans on the railing, his neighbor, Miss Thompson, the older woman who always waved at him from her garden, approaches. She hesitates before speaking. "I'm sorry, Andre." He looks at her, eyebrow raised. She sighs. "I knew Greg was a problem. I saw how he treated you, and I should have said something sooner." Andre studies her, searching for sincerity. He finds it. "It's not just you," he says finally. "Nobody ever wants to rock the boat until it's sinking." She nods, shame flickering across her face. Then, softly, "I'll do better next time." Andre exhales. It's not everything. It's not perfect. But it's a start. Greg's final goodbye. The day Greg moves out, no one comes to help him pack. No friends. No allies. Just Greg, his moving truck, and the weight of everything he lost. Andre doesn't go outside. He doesn't watch. He doesn't need to. Greg is a ghost now. The last trace of him disappears down the street. And just like that, he's gone. A closing note of justice. Later that night, Andre gets a text from his lawyer. HOA officially revised property regulations, strengthened trespassing enforcement, issued public acknowledgement of their failure to act sooner. It's not just about him anymore. The next black homeowner in this neighborhood, they won't have to fight the same fight. And that's the real victory. Final scene, a moment of triumph. Andre sits by his pool, feet dangling in the water. The moonlight ripples across the surface, smooth and undisturbed, like nothing ever happened. But something did. And this time, he won. The end.